Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games they come from, without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for our two games is 2016's Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice, a journey into Divination Séances in the land of Kurain, for the most spiritual courtroom objection adventure yet.
After that, it's a gravity-flipping retro platformer with an incredible chiptune soundtrack, 2010's VVVVVV.
Or as they say, WWW. No, that's not clever at all.
It's the letter V 6 times.
Yeah, pretty much, like that's just what it is. And then a very long, unnecessary title when it could just be Ace Attorney 6, Gyakuten Saiban 6. I mean, all sorts of things with these different titles here. But the theme is not unusual titles. No, it's trials. Whether they're in the courtroom or you have repetitive attempts at platforming, trial and error. You could also go with like teamwork in a hopeless situation. That could also work. See, we thought we would have difficulty last week, but we pulled something together. It's just the way we do. Joe, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty all right. We're recording a little later than usual, as you can probably tell from my lighting. But it's going to be a good show, I think. I'm very excited for both of these games, honestly.
Yeah, I think I was originally hoping to talk about Ori and the Blind Forest, which comes out on Nintendo Switch this week. If it's related to a current release, we'd like to try to tie it in. You've probably noticed in past episodes. But I haven't played it yet. So
yeah, me neither, and I can't.
So when it comes to February next year, when Will of the Wisps comes out, we'll talk about Ori then. So kind of improvising here, and I'll get to talking about my game very soon, but we got to talk about all the different composers we've talked about continue to do great work. And so when their work comes up in different headlines from the past week, we'd like to talk about them in our composer follow-up headlines. We start with Christopher Madigan's Cuphead. Yeah, that wonderful, wonderful jazz score of his. Still can't believe that's like the first score he's ever done. Going back to that episode of Cuphead that we talked about. But it became the first video game album to top the weekly Billboard jazz charts here in the United States. Crazy, just out of nowhere. Like it was the week of like September 14th and there it is. Cuphead, first time on the charts, top of the charts. And it must have been just a very fluke thing because it was outside like the top 25 this week. So, but still a very cool thing. A first time for a video game album.
Interesting. I didn't hear about that, so I mean, I heard about it when I read about it on the outline, but you get what I mean. Also, Toby Fox was in the news twice since our last recording. First of all, being that he released some new tracks for Deltarune Chapter 2 on Twitter. And also, Megalovania, Heartache, and Hopes and Dreams are coming as DLC to Taiko no Tatsujin Drum and Fun on October 10th. What is happening?
Toby Fox is just getting all the recognition, getting work with Game Freak, just playing Smash with Masahiro Sakurai. He's had a month. It's pretty amazing.
That game already has a fantastic track list, all things considered, but Undertale music's getting added to it. All right.
And for those that don't know, like that's the game where like you're doing the rhythm drumming on like the traditional Japanese drums.
We mainly know it as Taiko Drum Master here.
Yes.
So yeah, that's really cool. I don't know. I imagine, is that the English version? Did that come out?
I think it did.
I know they announced it, but I don't remember hearing about it coming out. I'm gonna have to look on the eShop at some point. But yeah, that's cool and unexpected and kind of weird.
Always good to see recognition for Toby Fox, certainly. Well, let's get into talking about my game. It is Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Spirit of Justice. And Yeah, God, what a title. Like, the last couple of games in the Phoenix Wright series, they gotta stick with the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney for whatever reason. They can't just shorten it to Ace Attorney. That would be silly. Why would they do that? It just makes the title long and verbose. We have talked about Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney previously on this show. Some of you may know it as its Japanese title of Gyakuten Saiban. That was the game where it started first on Game Boy Advance in Japan, and then it made its way to the West, and we know it first on Nintendo DS. It's those classic tunes from Masakazu Sugimori, which, we didn't have much information on him at the time for that episode. But now we're jumping all the way to the latest installment in the main series. And so that game was Gyakuten Saiban. This is Gyakuten Saiban 6. For Spirit of Justice. And it's the end of what might as well be considered the Apollo Justice trilogy. But again, it's the latest mainline game in the series. And you go through Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, you go through Ace Attorney Justice for All, you go through Ace Attorney Trials and Tribulations. And those are the 3 games that are getting repackaged in the Ace Attorney trilogy that you now see for the releases on the different modern consoles and PCs, etc. But then you have Gyakuten Saiban 4, which is Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. That was 2007 in Japan, 2008, early 2008 here in the West. Then 2013 was Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Dual Destinies. That's Gyakuten Saiban 5. And then 6 here, 2016, Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice. In between different spin-off games. You have the 2 Gyakuten Kenji games, which are the Ace Attorney Investigations games. That's where you play as Phoenix's rival Miles Edgeworth, and you play as a prosecutor. That was a situation where the first game came out over here, but the second one never did. Has the fan translation online. Highly recommend you go find and play that game. If you're a fan of the series and you've never played Gyakuten Kenji 2, super good, fantastic soundtrack. Was really tempted to pick that game, actually, for its soundtrack. I'm not going to lie. You had the crossover with Professor Layton, which we both love that game, and we will eventually talk about that game. We'll give it a little more time with some Ace Attorney and Professor Layton, but that crossover was amazing. You have the 2 games that are Japanese only, called Dai Gyakuten Saiban, which it's going back to the Meiji era of the 1800s, late 1800s, where you're playing as Phoenix's ancestor. It's directed by series creator Shu Takumi, and the first game at least had a run-in with Sherlock Holmes at the time, so the series has kind of gone through some odd crossovers and spin-offs since then, but we're really talking about the latest game in the Ace Attorney series here, at least as the West knows it. Because I think the second Dai Gyakuten Saiban game was 2017 in Japan. So
I believe so.
We're just playing with semantics here at this point. Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice released in Japan on June 9th, 2016 for Nintendo 3DS. It took only a few months, which is kind of amazing localization time if you think about it. September 8th, 2016. For the rest of the world on Nintendo 3DS. Then about a year later, on September 21st, 2017, it came to iOS and Android. It had some weird things you could play the first chapter for free, and then you could buy the rest in chunks as DLC, or you could just buy the game flat out. That whole mobile game pricing. Like the original Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, it is developed by Capcom and also published by Capcom. These are visual novel adventure games, where the crux of the gameplay is broken up into the investigation and the trial section. Investigation section, you talk to characters, you explore 3D environments this time, because on Nintendo 3DS, and you're building your collection of evidence as a defense attorney. You take that all to the trials, where you are cross-examining witnesses and you're pressing them to find contradictions. Then with those contradictions, you present your evidence to change the course of the case in your client's favor. So where does the adventures of Phoenix Wright and his crew, where we find them in Gyakuten Saiban 6 with Spirit of Justice. You are famous defense attorney Phoenix Wright, and he's traveling to the far east land of Kurain. It's a religious kingdom that is known for the art of spirit channeling. It's a land that's been mentioned in previous Ace Attorney games, but he's finally going there because he wants to visit his friend and former assistant, Maya Fey, who is about to complete her training as a channeling master of the Kurain technique. Now, when Phoenix's young tour guide is accused of murder, Wright naturally is a stand-up person. He stands up for the boy. But he discovers that the law works differently in Kurain, because defense attorneys no longer exist here, thanks to Divination Séances and the Defense Culpability Act. Now, a Divination Séance, they're these visions that show the perspective of the final moments of a channeled spirit's life. So it's basically getting the perspective of the victim, and then conclusions are drawn from it. And then the Defense Culpability Act is a law that's in place here in this land where lawyers must face the same punishment as their clients. So if the client's sentenced to death, so is the defense attorney, and so thus, people don't want to be defense attorneys anymore in Kurain. Meanwhile, Apollo Justice and Athena Sykes, who are Phoenix Wright's understudies, are left to defend requests that come into the Write Anything agency back home in California. The pressing questions overall are, what are the true secrets behind Kurain's legal system? And what is Apollo's connection to all of this? After all, it's the end of his trilogy. So what are our experiences with Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney, Spirit of Justice?
I played it at launch, and upon hearing that you were going to do this game, I tried to pull memories out of my head, and I don't have a lot of them. It's weird, because I enjoyed it. I liked the game. I remember liking it. But I don't... It's that and Dual Destinies, I think, that are just... There's not a lot left, memory-wise, mainly because I haven't played them as much as the other three. For the most part. I think Apollo Justice might also be in that area.
Yeah, I've played the original trilogy multiple times. I've played Apollo Justice twice. But I have only played Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice once each. And you're right, it was at launch for both of them. I remember parts, but I certainly had to piece certain things together. Things get crazy at the end of Spirit of Justice, and I had to be like, okay, what was the actual plot that was going on? I kind of had to have a bit of a refresher. But I've always loved this as, I think, my favorite soundtrack as a whole in the series, at least for the mainline games. And so I really wanted to bring it to, I guess, everyone's attention. Also because I just feel like it's a game that's been lost to time. Just not a lot of people remember Spirit of Justice, even if they have played it. I think it as evidenced by our examples. But it's good that at least we've played it. We generally remember... Yeah, the characters, at least certainly some of the songs. But yeah, I think both Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice could do with another playthrough just as a full refresher. I think that's a very good point. So I learned a lot of interesting things about the development of this game, which I'd like to share with you all. So Takashi Yamazaki has been the director of the main Ace Attorney games for quite a while now. And he was really feeling burnt out after Dual Destinies, after Gyakuten Saiban 5. But after seeing press and fan excitement for the series for one event in Taiwan, and then he went to San Diego Comic-Con, seeing all this excitement from the fan base really rejuvenated him. But then producer Motohide Eishiro really kind of limited Yamazaki's overall scope in his direction. Didn't want him to keep getting burned out. So he had Yamazaki focus on writing the scenario, the story, while Takuro Fuse was the gameplay and art director, and they kind of shared responsibilities there. So it was kind of a team effort, whereas it was more Yamazaki going full speed ahead for Dual Destinies. Now, Yamazaki's writing team built the scenario through brainstorming, where no one was allowed to shoot down each other's ideas. They kind of analyzed all the previous games in the series to determine what defines the series, what makes it fun, which kind of makes sense why they brought back the Kurain, spirit channeling and made that a big thing, because that was kind of something that was abandoned after the original trilogy, mostly because Maya Fey had not been brought back in the series since the third game, Trials and Tribulations. Like, that was probably the big thing of this game, was say, hey, Maya's finally back. And like, how sweet it was, Joe.
I remember that was the part that I was most excited about.
Yeah.
I was most excited. And then she's not even in the game that much, which is the sad part.
She really isn't, come to think of it. And again, she's on the defense, the stand. She's accused for murder again.
As usual.
What a surprise. Yeah. But yeah, like, that was the big thing going into it, is like that Maya's back. And so clearly they must have looked at the past, like, what can we bring back to excite the fans, to excite us working on it? But they also came up with the theme of courtroom revolution, in that it means that the oppressed and weak defeating the strong, because to them, that's also a kind of turnabout. Gyakuten Saiban translates roughly as turnabout trial in Japanese. So the turnabout, like, turning things on their head. It's, kind of Phoenix Wright's style in the courtroom. So the timeline of how this game was developed is also really interesting, because I guess the game was first mentioned by Capcom, as pre-production being in full force in December 2013. Then when the game got officially announced for the West in September 2015, they said that development was about 30% finished. But by the end of 2015, development was mostly finished, with the team working on, quote, polishing and adding finishing touches. So I wonder if it was really just a matter of a whole bunch of pre-production, the writing, the scripting, planning out the characters, and then they had the scripting tool already pretty much all set from Dual Destinies. It was a matter of just, well, let's, plug all these assets in. So I wonder if that was the case, but it just seemed unusually accelerated, especially by the end, for what they give from different quotes.
That seems incredibly fast.
Right?
Especially for something where, like, pre-production went for like a year, and like 2 years after they said, oh yeah, full force pre-production, they're only 30%. That doesn't seem correct, but all right. Hey, I don't work for Capcom. What can I say?
If we're taking them at their word, it just zoomed along. Well, the character of Apollo Justice was specifically given a more enhanced presence in this game, especially compared to Dual Destinies. And I think overall it really paid off for his narrative arc. The character of Reifa Padma Kurain is considered to be this game's heroine, according to the development team, which actually makes her really unique to the series because she starts the game in opposition to Phoenix, as opposed to being a character that's at his side. They really do pay extra attention to Reifa, though, because she has her own animated and vocalized Dance of Devotion sequence that kind of starts the whole Divination Séance section of Trials. So that's interesting. Also learned that A1 Pictures, who are the producers of the Ace Attorney anime series, which was going at the time, at least with the first season, they worked on the fully voiced animated cutscenes, which those also existed in Dual Destinies. But it was now the anime producers working on these ones. And then the 3D models were also boosted because Nintendo 3DS, the 3D models were boosted to kind of fit more in line with this specific design.
I love the 3D models in Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice. They're actually gorgeous, I think. Spirit of Justice especially, obviously, which now makes sense why.
Yeah, they just translated really well from, DS up to 3DS. It just worked perfectly. There was a developer roundtable interview that I found. I found more about this game than I honestly expected to because of how much people seem to not remember about this game, but there's a lot of material there, and I found it interesting that the art director, who's Fusei, notes that he likes how he was able to create a wide variety of women as characters in this game. More women, I would say, certainly than any other Ace Attorney title. While another developer then chimes in and notes, I think we have a gyaruge in a way, which is a girl game, loosely translated. It's like an adult game, mostly catered towards men audiences with a bunch of women in the game. So a gyaruge. We have a girl into science, a widow, a magician, to which Fusei then says, I just went for all the types of women that interested me. All of them.
All of them.
All of the women that I am interested in.
Girls into science, widows, magicians. That's all three, baby. We got them.
You just got it taken care of. Later, another developer said, of all the main characters, I like Refa. I love it when you can see her armpits during the dance.
Oh my god!
To which then the producer, Eiichiro, remarks, what's wrong with this team?
I don't think the team's the problem, dude.
That wasn't the only really weird comment, honestly. They kind of they just all kind of maybe perved out a little bit. I'm just guessing. So
is it Rafa? Like, never mind. Let's not get into that.
Yeah, age is a question. Let's put it that way. Her armpits, though. Okay. I also liked learning that the development team had an internal website that was originally meant for communication, and this started during Dual Destiny's development. But the team didn't really use it for that. They just kind of used it as a place where they could post their own doodles to help the team's morale, whether it was, kind of based on the themes of the game or based on holidays that were coming up, or even to enforce the office rule of there was no overtime allowed on Wednesdays.
Why Wednesdays only?
Yeah, I don't know. Must have been just a specific thing for their office. But, they had done this all for Dual Destinies, and then realized, we should make some of these at least publicly available for Spirit of Justice. Though they said, but about 70% of those things can't be shown outside the company. But that 70% were actually the funniest. Which, yeah, I get that. They also noted that we can't show the White Day one. I'm afraid women would go crazy if they saw that one. White Day being a holiday in certain Asian countries, Japan being one of them, where it takes place on March 14th, a month after Valentine's Day, where it's girls giving the boys chocolates. It's almost like the Sadie Hawkins kind of equivalent.
I thought White Day was the other way around.
The Wikipedia article I saw said it may be dependent on what the country's original, tradition for Valentine's Day is.
If anime has taught me anything, it's that White Day is the boys giving the girls chocolates in Japan.
Oh, interesting. So yeah, maybe it is then.
But that's me speaking from anime. I could be wildly wrong.
I'm going to trust anime as opposed to Wikipedia. So
that's a sentence you won't hear anybody say ever again.
But I linked in our outline here one of these pictures for Valentine's Day, and it's they do little fun designs, and there's Mia Fey in there. So go figure.
I like Maya the best in that picture, though.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. I'll throw that in the video if you want to go see that on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel. But yeah, that's just certain things they did in the development. Overall, the game was reviewed favorably with a Metacritic score of around 81. The visuals and the narrative were praised, but the divination seances were deemed wishy-washy and maybe stretching it a little bit, while the overall occult theming seemed like it might be divisive.
So by stretching it, what do they mean? That it seemed unrealistic? In the first game, he cross-examines a parrot.
I mean, parrots can talk in their own way, though. I think it's the whole idea of channeling the spirits, and they really go into it in this one. So if you don't believe in that kind of thing, that may seem a little bit of a stretch. I can kind of understand that critique.
I guess.
The game sold pretty well in Japan, and I have to point this out that we have sales data with the Japanese version because they, at least on initial runs, got a printed copy. In the United States, it was a digital-only release, and digital-only games don't really get their sales data tracked. So, in Japan, about 250,000 copies were sold in the first month there. But yeah, we don't have any publicly available stateside sales information, even though the game was sold for $30 at launch, as opposed to the usual 3DS 40 at the time. So, like, pretty good overall. Yet, Capcom says that the game met their sales targets. So I think that's about all you can honestly ask for, especially when you're talking about a 6th entry in a series.
A very niche series.
Yeah, at that for sure. It wasn't especially award-winning, though. I honestly don't think there was really any buzz for the game outside of Ace Attorney fans. So if you haven't heard of this game, yeah, that's probably why. At this point, the legacy is we're basically patiently waiting for Gyakuten Saiban 7 at this point, or whatever they'll call it, or whoever it will star. Could it be a Switch exclusive? I don't know. In fact, we were hoping for a reveal of a Gyakuten Saiban 7 at TGS 2018, especially there was social media teasing like new information coming at this panel. Get ready, get excited. Oh, it's Ace Attorney Trilogy coming to modern systems. So I think this game is bound to happen eventually, but give it a few years. In that developer roundtable interview, though, Eiichiro, the producer, notes that, quote, "If we're going to make the next game, I really want to get Franziska von Karma in the game. Where could she be now?"
She is the only one that has not shown up in another game since 3. She's the only one left.
She did show up in Ace Attorney Investigations, so Gyakuten Tenchi.
In Investigations, but like in the actual like mainline games, like she's the only one left. Pearl has come back, Maya's come back, Emma came back
right
immediately.
Gumshoe would be another one.
Gumshoe, yeah, he also has not shown up.
He was big in Investigations, but yeah, in the main series, no. So yeah, they could do a whole lot of things. They really left the ending very open to a future to go in, honestly, any direction.
I'm not going to lie. I think Gumshoe might be dead. That's my theory.
He stumbled across something he wasn't supposed to see.
And now he's gone.
I picked this game, though, because of its soundtrack. And I really do love this score. And that is composed by Noriyuki Iwadare. Noriyuki Iwadare, born on April 28th, 1964, in Matsumoto, Nagano Prefecture in Japan. He is inspired by listening to a lot of classical music. He didn't really talk about like his early years or, what he learned on, but he said he listened to a lot of classical music. So we're talking like Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, Brahman, Dvorak, Shostakovich, Stravinsky, Ravel, and Mahler. He also says he likes John Williams' work very much. Quote, "Star Wars is a wonderful piece of music, but I don't like the Darth Vader's theme, though." Which, okay. Sure. I mean, it's only one of the most famous evil themes of all time, but okay.
Sometimes you need to cut that negativity out of your life and say you don't like the Darth Vader's theme.
I get it.
The Imperial March is too much negativity. Gotta get rid of it.
He started composing game music after many years of, he said, being involved with bands in and out of university. He said, quote, "I certainly never imagined I would become a game music composer when I was younger. I knew that I really wanted to write music." So he ended up writing a piece for a game called Space Invaders: Day of Resurrection. It was a game for a PC Engine. And he realized that he liked writing music to images. Now, it didn't necessarily have to be games per se. I mean, there are plenty of other visual mediums out there. But games was kind of the path that he found himself on. When someone asked him a question about, what does it take to be a composer? What can I do to be a game composer? He says, quote, "I believe there is no qualification for being a music composer, and a music degree is not important. You will be a music composer when you say to yourself, I am a music composer. Please do your best to compose music as much as you can and that you feel touched by it. Please don't get influenced by what you should do or what you should not do to compose your music. So we've talked about different composers where like the education is everything or you had a fallback plan or whatever, but it seems just like as long as you can write music and you write things that inspire you and others, like that's all you really need. For him, melody comes first when it comes to a composition. Like he imagines the music in his mind, and then once the image is there, that includes the music style, the tempo, the instruments, the situation, the melody, etc. He says it can take about 3 hours to complete the music and the arrangement overall. His game music career kind of hit the ground running pretty early. In 1991, he won his first award in the Best Game Music Prize for the Mega Drive game music category for Lunar the Silver Star. He hasn't composed music for just games, though. He's composed music for Tokyo Disneyland, in addition to Japanese dance shows, television, and radio programs. And I think Nobuo Uematsu is another one where we mentioned that he gets inspiration for his melodies, his chord progressions, etc., while walking his dog.
Dogs are powerful.
It's a pretty good way of freeing your mind. I want to shout out specifically, he had an English webpage, which, was captured via Internet Archives from like 2004. And had like mailbag section where people could ask him questions. Pulled a lot of information from there. The Wikipedia article was okay, but wasn't that detailed. So shout out to the old English webpage that he had. His discography is interesting. He's worked on the Ace Attorney series, of course. He started with Trials and Tribulations after Sugimori did the first 2 games. But then he didn't work on Apollo Justice, but pretty much like every game since then. Tomohito Nishiura did the crossover with Professor Layton, though, of course, the Layton composer. But the Ace Attorney Investigation games, those are him. So he's been kind of following the series there. He was on the Kid Icarus Uprising composition team. We talked about that game in a previous episode. He did the chapters for, the songs for In the Space Pirate Ship, Hades' Infernal theme, which that's a good one from that game. Some of the endgame chapters, as well as the staff roll from that game.
Soon, if we collect all of the composers from Kid Icarus Uprising, we'll have the Infinity Stone. That was the joke I was going for, but it didn't come together. Iwadare's the Soul Stone.
I can see it happening, though. Like, we're on our way. We're getting close.
Because we've covered 3 out of like 5?
Something
I
like
think.
That. Yeah. We're getting there for sure. He's worked on the Langrisser series, but he's mostly famous for working on the Lunar series and the Grandia series. He also worked on Radiata Stories and some of these Japanese dating sim games, like the True Love Story series, and most recently, Rico Love. So he's worked on a bunch of different games. He was also on the Smash Brothers arrangement team, and so we like to highlight when a composer has worked on different Super Smash Brothers games on those soundtracks. For Brawl, he arranged Yoshi's Island from Yoshi's Island, Meta Knight's Revenge from Kirby Superstar, and with Mila's Divine Protection from Fire Emblem Gaiden. On the Wii U and 3DS game for Super Smash Bros., he arranged Gear Getaway from Donkey Kong Country Returns. He composed and arranged In the Space Pirate Ship from Kid Icarus Uprising. And he did the arrangement for Airman Stage from Mega Man 2. Most recently for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, he arranged City Trial from Kirby Air Ride, which that was featured on the SmashBros.com website. He arranged the new arrangement for Delfino Plaza from Super Mario Sunshine, Top Man Stage from Mega Man 3, Light Plane from Pilot Wings, a new arrangement of that one, and Electroplankton from Electroplankton. So, Iwadare is a pretty solid fixture in the Japanese composition space, certainly helping with all those Smash games.
That's probably the most songs any of our composers have done for Smash yet.
That's a really good point. I think it has. Yeah, that's right, I think. When it comes to Spirit of Justice's soundtrack specifically, there are other composers that worked on it, including Toshihiko Horiyama and Masami Onodera. Horiyama specifically was the one who primarily composed Apollo Justice, Ace Attorney. So ever since then, he had kind of been the sound director, and he was the sound director for Spirit of Justice. So technically, all of Iwadare's tracks had to go through him. And so Iwadare said that he prepared like 4 versions of each track when it was time to review them, like just in case. So he had all these variations planned. So Horiyama must be, someone very difficult to please in that sense. I learned that, at least for this game, and I'm sure probably for other games on 3DS, music and instruments are set at different levels, depending on whether the user, the player, has headphones plugged into the 3DS or not. For this game in particular, they considered the default to be just the speakers, which aren't really that powerful. It can get kind of tinny. The bass can get lost. But yeah, they have whole different settings for the balance and the levels for the music based on how you're listening to it. That makes a whole lot of sense, but I hadn't really thought of that before. New sound effects were recorded specifically for Spirit of Justice, like the gavel bang was a new, sound recording, and also Nayuta's beads. Nayuta Sadmahi is the prosecutor for this game. He wears beads, so they recorded beads clinking together. I mean, with 3DS, you can certainly open, the sound up way more. You're not playing the music off of a sound chip on the device. You're streaming the music, so you can pre-record something and then just stream the file. In fact, Iwadare personally recorded instruments live on what he could play, including guitar, trombone, other brass instruments. There's a character in the first case, speaking of guitar, and this is where we have to talk about the localization for this game, because you're exploring this kingdom of Kurain. You can take much more freedom and liberty with the puns that Ace Attorney is famous for having. Certainly names of characters in the past, when you're kind of basing it in English, can only do so much with believability with puns. But when you bring in a foreign language, and with a foreign land of Kurain, you get names like Peaslub Andestandin, who is this Jesus-looking dude with a long beard. And then, not to spoil the first case, but he has this breakdown where he essentially turns into like death metal Jesus. And instead of like a traditional Japanese stringed instrument, it goes into like heavy metal guitar, to the point where like the music syncs up with his testimony and becomes like a rock concert. It's kind of amazing in context, actually. But you have to think of like all the work that went into it. There were 41 different guitar music segments composed just for Andestandin's testimonies. And other guitarists were brought in. It was not Iwadare, but other guitarists were brought in for this. And I guess the guitars on Athena Sykes' theme. They said that like one of the biggest challenges as far as the sound for that, though, was getting the beep, 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 beeps of the text reading out to line up specifically with the music. So it was like believable that he was singing with these guitar parts. I feel like it's hard to describe it if you've never seen this section of the game, but believe me when I said that's a lot of work, and it's very memorable early on.
Wow, I forgot about that entire part. And now that like we're talking about it, it's all rushing back.
Yeah.
I forgot that was his name.
Yeah, there are a lot of names like Tarust in me and Bulib in me. You can have some long stretches when it comes to getting the puns in there. So, they kind of wanted to try to get the right instrument tones for how they could best represent this land of Kurain. They first thought like maybe Indian and Chinese instruments could be considered, but they didn't want people to think of those lands specifically. Like, it wouldn't be right. The final result ended up being more traditional Japanese, which is odd when you consider, like, yeah, the Americans localize it as, oh, we're in Los Angeles for the Write Anything agency, but as far as I know, they still try to keep it pretty Japanese for the Gyakuten Saiban releases, but then it's like, Kurain is even more so traditional. But I think they overall got a really good balance, and we'll have a really good example of that in one of our Critical 5 tracks. And we'll start this Critical 5 with the song The Basics of the Case. So this is one of the couple here that is actually not composed by Iwadare. Iwadare did like a lot of the main tracks that you'd expect like need to be here for an Ace Attorney game, but Toshihiko Horiyama kind of flushed out the rest of them, and this is one of them that Horiyama did. This is the opening statement theme, when whether it's, you know, the detective, it's Emma in this case, or other characters are kind of just laying out like the basics of what do we know about this case. Maybe, you know, the prosecutor's making his opening statement. But yeah, wow, this really sets the right mood. It's really chill. It's one that I hear and it really stuck with me and like had to be here for me. Probably one of my favorite songs on the soundtrack. There's just a lot of darkness and intrigue. It's got this deliberate pace to it. But just to get this pace going, and you're hearing about like, what are we about to get into in this trial? It just really sets that kind of spiritual tone early.
I like the bass part a lot, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I personally prefer stuff like Logic and Trick from the first game. But also, like, this is still pretty good.
Yeah. Logic and Trick is definitely more treble, while this kind of goes into more bass. You're right. That's a good point. Second track on the Critical 5, Nayuta. Technically, the full title on the album is Nayuta, The Last Rights Prosecutor. It starts to be a long title, though. So, Nayuta, the first part is kind of the most important piece here. So, yes, this is the main theme for Prosecutor Nayuta Sadmahi. To break down his name, because it's not a pun or anything like that, apparently Nayuta comes from a Sanskrit word meaning myriad, which could suggest that, you know, he's hiding a bunch of different personalities, you know, behind his face. Just kind of, he's a very secretive, closed off person until later game events. So yeah, that kind of suggests that. Sadmahi, though, comes from the Japanese saying, Hotoke no kao mo sando made, which translates out to, even the Buddha will get angry if you brush his face thrice. And I guess they reference that thrice contact in a couple lines in the game, but it would be something that Japanese players would know, but it's one of those weird translations over from English, I guess. But yeah, when this piece plays, that guitar string riff, it just cuts right into the action. And just like on a dime, and it's powerful. But I think it's the chorus of voices that is just especially chilling. It's a totally different vibe for a prosecutor theme. And I'm not about to like rank them. I would still say, the Fragrance of Dark Coffee, Godot's theme from Trials and Tribulations is still the GOAT in that sense. But the thing is, this one is just so different because Nayuta is a very different prosecutor character. But it fits perfectly well though. And so it's a track that always stands out. It's crucial to include it here. So had to be here.
Well, it's especially important that it like really points out how different Nayuta is, especially in comparison to the last prosecutor.
Oh yeah.
Or even the one before that.
Yeah.
Being Black Quill in Dual Destinies and Gavin in Apollo Justice, which are completely different feelings from him.
A criminal with a hawk and a rock star. Yeah, very, very different characters.
So, I don't know. This was another one of those songs where it was like, I couldn't have pulled it out of my head without prompting, but the instant I went and listened back to it, yeah, no, I remember the song. This is, I remember it very well.
Absolutely. It wouldn't be an Ace Attorney game, though, without our third critical track here, Pursuit, Cornering Together. And I mean, you gotta have the Pursuit theme here on a Critical 5 for an Ace Attorney. Unless it sucks. But the Pursuit themes rarely ever do. They're the ones that get you hyped as you're really cornering the big bad villain of the case, like really at its final stakes here. So they're the best moments of the trials. The best music goes along with it. And my goodness, does Iwadare make just the best Pursuit themes. Yes, Cornered from the original Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney is a classic from Sugimori. There's a deep nostalgia there, but the Caught variation for Trials and Tribulation, I'd say both of them from both Gyakuten Kenji games. I think, if you ask me, Gyakuten Kenji 2's is like the all-timer for Pursuit themes. That's also kind of why I was really tempted to do that game, but nobody's really played it except me and a couple other friends. I think this one really delivers, though. If anything, it's maybe a little heavy on the synths.
I think I agree with that. I think I would have liked it a little bit better. It's a very good song, but I would have liked it a little bit better if, like the rest of the soundtrack, they focused a little bit harder on the Eastern instruments.
I agree with that. I think that would be a good instrument choice, but at the same time, it's also like, Phoenix coming in from California to kind of break those chains. But yeah, it's still too much maybe on the synths. I still think the whole like minute and 15-second loop though is amazing, and it was really hard to pick just the 30 seconds of this, but hopefully it gives you a good sense of what this song is like. Number 4 on the Critical 5, Lady Kira. Now this full title being Lady Kira, Guardian of Kurain. Kira? Kira? Killer? This character of Lady Kira plays a pretty crucial role in case or chapter number 3. And she's like this assassin character who's like in the folklore of Kurain. But her outfit and overall just dress play a role in the murder that takes place here. And this is the case where Maya Fey is on trial. So it's a pretty important chapter. But I think this really shows off in the best way all of that classic Japanese instrumentation that represents this Kurainese folklore and history. And I think it honestly gives like tracks like Steel Samurai or Amazing Ninetales, Ninetales being from Dual Destinies, a real run for their money. It just really shows all those great instruments for sure.
Yeah, I think giving it a run for their money is definitely... Though, to be fair, have we gotten a point in the like games where the Steel Samurai theme gets a makeover? I don't think we have.
I'm not sure. At the very least, it gets the cell phone ringtone rendition.
Yeah, it needs to like... All right, there's who needs to come back in 7. Will Powers, let's get him in there. Yeah. We'll get the Steel Samurai theme in there. We'll see how it holds up. But for now, honestly, I might like this better than the Steel Samurai theme. That's blasphemy to say, I know, but it's good.
It's a badass theme. In that developer interview, they kind of joked bringing back Wendy Oldbach, and everyone was like, no!
So even they didn't want to do it.
Yeah, or at least for a future game, there's no point.
She's too busy following Edgeworth.
My last song on the Critical 5 for me has to be The Court of Resignation. And for this one only, we have to get into some spoilers. So if that's a problem for you, I'd say jump ahead a couple minutes, or find the next time point for the cutting room floor, because I have to talk about spoilers here. If that's a problem for you, please jump ahead briefly. This is the final boss theme, essentially. This is the theme for Queen Garan. Garan Segatar Kurain is one of these characters that's in the running for the most vile and despicable Ace Attorney antagonist ever. She's up there with Dahlia Hawthorne. She's up there with Blaze DeBest. And if you don't know who Blaze DeBest is, you need to play Gyakuten Kenshi 2. Honestly, though, her reveal is amazing, because you think it's Inga, the minister, who's this big, bad, beefy dude all along. And it's like, nah, it's the queen who's been pulling the strings all along as, a prosecutor. And she is the law. And she has this Seymour-like reveal from Final Fantasy X with the hair. The hair goes nuts. And it's this daunting, ominous theme that just suits her so perfectly. I think if players wanted a resolution of that Morgan Fay character arc, where it's never going to happen, she's still in prison from that trilogy. But this is like the comeuppance of like all of those character arcs of the balance of power and not having the ability to channel spirits, but yet wanting all that lust for power. I think she's the culmination of all that to a T.
She has better hair. Her hair looks better than Seymour's.
Yeah.
As somebody playing Final Fantasy X right now. But that is neither here nor there. I don't actually remember a lot about Garan. I feel like I remember thinking that she was despicable and disgusting, but I don't remember anything about the ending of that game at all.
So yeah, it definitely took some reading for me too. But yeah, to kind of walk through it all, and yeah, I won't even do the whole spoil. If someone's still listening at this point, I won't spoil the biggest reveal shocker from that game, because oh god, that's an Ace Attorney all-timer for that one. If you play that game, I think you know what I'm talking about, because that one comes with its own track of like dun 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 dun, and it's like it's a big time wallop of a reveal. I won't even I won't touch that one here in case anyone's listening. Please play this game. I don't think things are necessarily spoiled per se to know that Garon's the big bad antagonist at the end, but it's certainly a really cool reveal, and she's got a great song to go with it. When it comes to tracks on the cutting room floor, Joe, hit me with yours first.
I actually have some this time. It's like the first time in 2 weeks.
Dang.
I had to go back and listen to some of the soundtrack because, again, I didn't remember a lot from the game. But one that really stuck out to me was The Dance of Devotion. Which is, of course, the song that plays when Rafa does her Divination Séance to do the whole life view, the last sights of the victim and everything. And wow, this song is so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you included it because it was one that's like, I hate to leave it off. It's so important to the story. Some people skip it, and those people are scrubs.
Oh, those people are super, like, oh, I still kind of remember thinking, I don't think I ever skipped it. I still kind of remember thinking the cutscene was really well done. It gets a little bit repetitive after like the fourth time you see it.
Yeah.
But like it's still, compared to anything else Ace Attorney has gotten up to that point, like they're getting up there in some of their budget, man. They're starting to do some stuff.
Armpits,
apparently.
I found some interesting factoids about this song, actually. This is Iwadare actually playing what he said was a tuned-up mandolin that created some mystifying tune, somewhat like a biwa. And I don't know what a biwa is, but it's probably another stringed instrument. He just had this instrument sitting around at home, and it just apparently fit for this track perfectly. The vocals are done by Haruka Shimotsuki, who the team had worked with before. There was like a live orchestra concert in 2008 that they put on CD. It's not the Gyakuten Meets Orchestra album. It's something different. But it's based on this live orchestral version that even has a DVD print of it. And she was the vocalist on Lamirar's song from Apollo Justice, the guitar's Serenade. So the team, I guess, immediately thought of her for this track. And so it was, that performance kind of led her to be back for this game.
That's, I've heard that version of that song, actually. Huh, that's interesting to know.
Yeah.
And my other song on the cutting room floor is Phoenix Wright, Objection. It's just a remix of his Objection theme from Trials and Tribulations, but like this is a jumping remix of this song.
Yeah,
like damn, it's real good.
So this is generally called Objection 2016. It's his main theme. If you haven't heard this one for whatever reason before, it kind of plays at these mid-level objections while in court. Yeah, it's a very exciting one. Like they really get the pace down pat well for this one. I'll kind of take a step back a little bit before that objection, and for my critical track songs, my cutting room floor songs rather, I'll start with Cross Examination Allegro. And similarly, this is, Allegro 2016. But man, I think this is probably one of the most intense Allegro themes the series has ever had. Especially the B part of the track, where I think it just cuts off for the clip itself. That's a really cool bit. I definitely like that one a lot, but a lot of good energy to this one, and really pressing and trying to dig in and press and find that contradiction so that you can object, and then it goes into either objection or pursuit. Good stuff.
I like it, but I when it comes to, like, you look at Ace Attorney 1, Trials and Tribulations, and then my personal favorite, which is cheating, I know, but it's fine. My list, I get to make the rules. Actually, it's your list, but Layton versus Ace Attorney, I think, is my favorite cross-examination theme in the entire series.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think the pursuit theme from that one is especially good. But we'll talk about those when we get to talking about that game. My second theme on the cutting room floor is Mr. Rios. Also known as Mr. Rios, the Masked Magician on the soundtrack. This is another Toshihiko Horiyama joint. And man, like, this song had no reason being a part of Case 2. The whole Case 2 overall is fantastic. Like, please more things with Troop Grammari always. Always bring up more things with Troop Grammari, Trucy Wright, the whole family work drama, everything there. You're like, yes, more of that, please. If you're trying to picture a character that this theme goes with, just imagine like Robert Downey Jr. or Johnny Depp. You'll kind of get that smarmy picture of the character this theme goes with. But this one stands out as like he's an early antagonist and a pretty threatening one for Chapter 2. It was really, really good. And I think it fit really well in the pace of the story they're trying to tell, but kind of sets the stakes pretty high pretty early.
I remember absolutely nothing about this case. I can't even pull up a picture in my head of this character. I had to replay these games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Gotta replay these games. You'll see it and you'll be like, oh yeah. And then there's the whole magician connection in there. So what will I never forget about this game, as I've talked about it for far too long, I think, honestly, for a game that not a lot of people remember, honestly. When you talk about, what was the last Ace Attorney game? It's like, oh yeah, this one was it, wasn't it? Huh. Just as I said, it's a game that seems to be lost to time. And, that's unfortunate because it's one I definitely remember enjoying playing. But I'm also, looking forward to the future of the series. And while I do that, I probably should replay Gyakuten Saiban 5 and 6.
The thing that I am never going to forget is, I've talked about, like, I don't remember much of this game, but I think it's more like the situation I was in when I played it. I was living in my grandparents' basement, where it took like 2 hours to download it, and I had to go out and put the DS on the stairs outside of my, I can't call it a room. It was like a chamber. It was huge. It was a whole basement, just a big open area. And I had to go put my 3DS on the stairs outside of the door because the Wi-Fi was awful down there. And I remember playing it in bed a lot. And that's basically where my memories of this game lie, I guess.
But yeah, they're certainly worth replays, I think. And if you haven't played it for the first time, it's definitely a good game. But it definitely takes a lot of knowledge of past series events. So maybe play the other ones first if you haven't. So to transition to our next game, we like to cover a YouTube remix or a OC remix cover. Some sort of fan take on the music from this game. And boy, a whole lot of people, again, seem to have forgotten that this game existed. But I'd like to finally bring up Adriana Figueroa on this show. Or as she goes by on YouTube, Adrisaurus. Vocalist that appears in many different fan covers out there. But she has a cover of Apollo Justice's theme, which of course originally from Gyakuten Saibon 4, Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, but of course makes its return in a new remix in this game. And so she did a vocal cover where she added her own lyrics to the theme, and I liked it a whole lot. So please enjoy that, and we'll be right back.
In this world there is no black and white. I'm told that there will never be a wrong or a right. But is that true? Should I believe that because others do? Somewhere deep inside the wheel, the fate is turning slowly but surely.
Let's do a weird bit of changing of gears and of aesthetics and of everything and talk about VVVVVV. It was originally released on PC on January 11th, 2010, which means we're coming up on the 10th anniversary of this game.
Wow.
Here in about 4 or 5 months. Whew. It is the 20th game made by developer Terry Kavanagh, but was his first major success. Before this, he had made like Flash games and stuff like that. Most of it, I've never heard of a single one of them on the list. So if you're wondering why I didn't name any of them, that's why. I don't know any of them. So the game has an odd title. If you didn't notice, it's just the letter V 6 times. And there are actually multiple reasons for this, such as the main one being that every character in the game's name starts with a V. You have Viridian, Vermilion, Victoria, Verdigris, Violet, and Vitellery. Or the fact that, or at least I think this is the best reason for why it's titled as such, a bunch of V's in a row look kind of like spikes. Which is something you're going to encounter a lot in this game. So, I like that name because it has multiple reasons why it is such, and also people think you're losing your mind when you tell them that that's what the game is called. It is a platformer where you play as the brave Captain Viridian, a man who does not have the ability to jump. I don't know what you're thinking. You just said it was a platformer. How do you do a platformer and not jump? Well, he may not be able to jump, but he does have the ability to flip his own gravity, meaning he can be running on the floor, and then you hit the button, and he'll flip, and now the ceiling is the floor, and that kind of thing. And it only affects him, and it's just a really interesting way of doing a platformer, I think. The story is that Viridian's ship, one day while flying his spaceship, is assaulted by dimensional interference, and he and his crew are forced to evacuate the ship using the teleporter on board. But something goes wrong, and the entire crew, Viridian included, is scattered out amongst the mysterious Dimension VVVVVV, another reason why the game is called that. Viridian must make his way through this mysterious dimension to rescue his crew members and find the cause of the interference that trapped them there in the first place. So with that very short plot synopsis, what are our experiences with VVVVVV?
I have it on computer and Steam through a Humble Bundle, but it's never been a game that I've had an itch to go play. So I know quite a few songs on the soundtrack from it. It's a very brief soundtrack, so I think you've covered them very well adequately when we get to that. But yeah, it's not one I've actually played myself. And when I see clips of it, especially some of the harder parts, some of the harder challenges, it's like, might not be my kind of game, but I could be convinced in this one.
It is one of my favorite indie games ever. I have bought it 3 separate times, maybe 4. I have bought it on PC. I bought it on PC when it first came out. I don't remember why. I don't remember what convinced me to buy the game. I don't think I got it through a Humble Bundle, but I bought it on 3DS pretty much right when that came out. And I bought it on Switch, again, pretty much right when that came out. I might have bought it on PS4 at some point. I don't actually remember if I did. But yeah, I've bought this game a lot. I've beaten it quite a bit. I love it. It's a great game. It was originally announced on Kavanagh's personal blog in June of 2009 at which point it had been in development for about 2 weeks, and Kavanaugh said that he expected it to be completely done within 2 more weeks.
Oh my gosh.
That didn't happen, obviously, because as I said, the game came out in January the next year, but I mean, hey, you gotta shoot for the moon. Even if you miss, you land among VVVVV. The flipping mechanic was apparently borrowed from one of his previous games called Sine Wave Ninja. Again, I've never heard of it or played it. So, but he felt like other games that had gravity flipping mechanics like it didn't really treat it as the core concept. It was like a gimmick in certain parts or something like that. And so that became his goal for VVVVV to create a game where that was what you did. That was the central concept and everything else was a gimmick. And there are all the different sections of the game have their own like sort of gimmick. There's one, I actually went and replayed it about 2 hours before recording because it's very short. And it's got things like, little wires that cause you to flip when you hit them, or parts where you have endless falling and you have to sort of deal with these almost portal-like physics and stuff like that. And it's just really, really interesting the way that they do it. While many of Kavanaugh's previous titles had apparently been like experiments in different storytelling methods, this one, he wanted to be more focused on level design, and boy, it shows. The level design in this game is chef's kiss. It's so good. It's absolutely incredible. Some of them feel a little bit frustrating sometimes, but overall, still very good. Visually, the game is based on titles released for the Commodore 64, because Kavanaugh had grown up playing these games as a child. And that's why it has a chiptune soundtrack. That's why the graphics look the way they do. The loading screen literally just looks like a Commodore 64 loading screen. And various rooms in the game are named. All of the rooms, most of them at least, like the ones that are in like obstacle course sequences at the very least, have names at the bottom of the screen. And speaking of names, those were all apparently provided by Bennett Foddy.
What?
Now, back then, Bennett Foddy would have been known as the developer of QWOP.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Nowadays, he is more known for being the developer of Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy. And he named all the rooms in the game.
I had no idea he did QWOP. That's amazing. Yeah, the names are certainly something. I think if the one that scares me the most is Vini Vidi Vici. Like that,
yeah.
That one is just, that's insane. Like there's no way I'd be able to do that.
The other reason for the game's simple visuals is that Kavanaugh just wanted to indulge in a love for retro games, a love for retro graphics, a love for retro everything. He lacked the ability to make modern looking games, as most like indie developers did back then. And like, think of today when think of that game coming out that came out last week at time of release, like Sayonara Wild Hearts. Imagine somebody being able to make that game in 2010. They couldn't. Like, unless they were a big studio with like some money behind them, they couldn't. So, he was just kind of working to what he had. He went for making things visually interesting with the limited resources that he had available to him. A fun thing in the game that I did not think about, and I actually found it during my replay, this can be completely missed, but somewhere on the map, there is a sad elephant. Literally exactly what it sounds like. It's a giant elephant. Like when I say giant, I mean it takes up 4 screens that is crying a single tear, and it does nothing. Except for the fact that if Viridian is in the room with it for too long, he gets sad. That's literally all it does.
Because it usually is just like an eye and then like a happy smile. Right?
Yeah. This apparently launched a ton of fan theories, as fans were just like, what does it mean? What does the elephant mean? What does it symbolize? Some people theorize that it might be a reference to the Commodore 64 game Jet Set Willy, which I guess is also where the names come from. Like that's where that concept comes from. But apparently Kavanaugh at some point did a developer interview where he was like, yeah, it's from a dream journal that I was keeping during production. That's all it is. It doesn't mean anything.
So some games like The Last of Us have giraffes. This game has sad elephant.
This game has a sad elephant that does nothing. And you can completely miss it too. You at no point have to go past it. I think I had played the game like 3 times before I finally saw it for the first time. So VVVVVV was Kavanaugh's first commercially released title. All of his titles before this had just been like freeware Flash games, probably on Newgrounds, on his website, stuff like that. But he had just decided that at a certain point, the amount of work that he had put into this game meant that he kind of had to charge for it. Like, he couldn't justify not. And good for him. I'm glad he did that. The game initially launched at a price point of $15, but is now like anywhere you go to buy it, it's $5. And he says that he changed that mainly because he knew that the price point turned a lot of people off on the game. Personally, I'm torn because the game can be beaten in like an hour if you know what you're doing. But it's also like a game that I've gone back and played so many times and I've bought it so many times that like, I don't know, $15 feels like a fair price. And there's also the whole like conversation that we won't have now where it's just like video game developers keep doing this rush to the bottom and they're all underpricing their games. And yeah, there's that whole thing. And I think this is another example of that. And it's kind of unfortunate, but I get what he means. And he still made money. He still made a good amount of money. Because the game was generally well received by critics. The PC version is currently sitting at an 81 on Metacritic, an 81 out of 100. Most of the praise was, of course, given to its level design, because again, it's almost perfect, basically. And it was even given the Most Fun and Compelling Game award at Indiecade in October of 2010, but that seems to be the only award that it won at all. And it's since been released on everything except the Xbox. Which is weird, because it came out on 3DS in 2011. It came out on iOS, Android, and the Ouya in 2014, if you remember the Ouya.
Yo, Ouya.
It's definitely sure existed. It came out on the PS4 and PS Vita in 2015, and of course came out on the Nintendo Switch in 2017. So it's out on everything except for the Xbox. It's even out on the Commodore 64, which it was fully ported to in 2017.
That's amazing.
If for some reason you own a Commodore 64 that still works and you want to play VVVVV on it, you can. Terry Kavanaugh is still making games today. He actually just released a game last month called Dicey Dungeons. I saw a stand for Dicey Dungeons at E3. Walked by it multiple times. Didn't realize that it was Terry Kavanaugh's game. I probably walked past Terry Kavanaugh at least 15 times during E3. I'm super mad that I didn't realize that, because if I had have seen him, I would have like gone to shake his hand, because the dude made a game that I've played probably like 10 times now. Oh well, I told Matt that we have to go back. And I don't mean like we got to go to E3 next year. I mean like we got to make a time machine and go back.
And maybe you can undo the ESA from all their drama.
maybe that too. Or alternatively, let the ESA burn. They kind of deserve it. The thing that I was actually quite surprised that reviews didn't really touch on more was the soundtrack, because it is incredible and it was done by one Magnus Pålsson. And I couldn't actually find much on him, actually. He's still very active on Twitter, as you pointed out. He tweets quite often. But his website doesn't seem like it's been updated in a really long time. He had 2 links to interviews at the bottom of his About Me page, both of them dead links. A lot of the images were dead links. Just did not seem like it was a website that had been updated in years, unfortunately. And it doesn't help that his moniker, his alias is Soul Eye, which is apparently also the moniker of an American rapper I did not know existed until today.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. Especially when I was like finding like, oh, Soul Eye verified on Twitter. Oh, that's not him. But you can follow Magnus on Twitter at Magnus Render. Mm-hmm. So please do that.
So he still is active on the internet. He is based out of Sweden and claims that he first got into games through the Game & Watch.
I think that's +1 new country for Sweden on our list.
I believe so. I don't think we've had a Swedish composer quite yet. And he claims that he prefers to have his music have a lo-fi feel with catchy melodies to give them a retro attitude, sort of. Like I said, he doesn't seem like he does much lately. His last release on Bandcamp was from 2016. There hasn't been anything since then. That was 3 years ago. So I hope he's still doing things and I just wasn't looking in the right place, but I tried to find anything. Especially for his discography, it was very difficult to... He doesn't have a Wikipedia page, first of all. And again, his website was not updated. But from what I could glean, VVVVVV is his most famous work, for sure. I don't recognize any other names of any of the games on his discography. He did personally point out a few on his About Me page, being games called Extreme Road Trip, Garden Gnome Carnage, and Space Phallus.
I mean, those are all kind of amazing names.
They're incredible names. I've not heard of a single game on that list. So unfortunate, but sometimes that's what happens. Maybe one day we'll get to talk to Magnus Pålsson. That would be super fun. As for actual stuff on the development of the soundtrack of the game, this is one of the few soundtracks we've talked about. I can't think of any others. There are probably a couple others that I can't think of right now, but it's the first one that was released with a name that wasn't just game title original soundtrack, if it was released at all. The album is actually titled PPPPPP in reference to the fact that every single track's title starts with a P. And Pålsson was apparently brought onto the project after Kavanaugh heard a song of his in the aforementioned game Space Phallus. Kavanaugh approached him, which caused Pålsson to go play some of Kavanaugh's games, and Pålsson came back impressed and agreed to do the music for the game that he was currently working on. His goal was apparently to, quote, make up-tempo happy songs that would ingrain themselves into your mind whether you want them to or not. So much so that you'd go humming them when not playing, making you want to come back to the game even more. Hey man, you nailed it.
Did a good job on that one for sure.
Also, 2 remix albums have since been released by Pålsson under his name, one being an arranged album called, I don't know how to say this, Power Up, which is just PPP, Power Up. All one word, exclamation point. That was released in 2011 and features multiple remixes by other artists such as remixer Vertigrand and also Danny Baranowski, to name 2 that stuck out to me. As well as a power metal remix album alongside Jules Conroy of Family Jewels called MMMMMM in 2014. There's a pattern here if you haven't noticed. This album apparently includes a mod file to replace the in-game tracks with the songs from the album, which is super cool.
That's pretty neat.
Let's get into those 5 critical tracks. Boy, we're moving way faster than we usually do. There's not a lot on this game. It's a short game. And it was made by one guy. And the last time we talked about a game made by one guy, it was Stardew Valley. And he also did the music and everything. So sometimes there's just not a lot of information in general. And that's fine.
But the soundtrack is certainly worth talking about.
Oh, absolutely. And we're going to start that discussion with our first critical track, presenting VVVVVV. This is the music on the title screen. It's calm. It's kind of muffled, honestly. Like it sounds like it's playing a little bit farther down a hallway or something. But it also feels kind of welcoming and like an adventure is just waiting to bust out. To me, it seems to be asking like, "Are you ready? Ready to go?" And I don't think it's one of the best songs on the soundtrack, but I do think that by virtue of being like the first thing you hear upon loading up the game, and being like this completely different tone to the rest of the soundtrack, it's worth mentioning, I think.
Yeah, the high-pitched melody certainly is memorable amongst all the low tones. It really cuts through, and yeah, you're right. It's very different than the rest of the album, so don't get any impressions going on early here, but it's certainly important to include.
Now, if you do want to build some impressions, have I got the song for you? Because our second critical track is probably the most well-known one from the game. It is Pushing Onwards. So this is what the music of VVVVVV sounds like. This is the music for the very first area of the game, which I had forgotten that you actually go back to that area. Like one of the places you go to get one of your crew members is actually like built in to the first area. It's just right alongside it, so it shares the song right there too. And like this is basically the first song you hear when gameplay starts, and it's perfect for that. It's driving, it's triumphant, and it's got this feel like, yeah, let's do this. Let's get going.
Yeah, this whole pace of it's like, yeah, you just go and you keep trying, learn the mechanics, do your thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, and it's one of my favorite like intro songs to a game pretty much ever. But it's not my favorite song on the soundtrack. For that, we have to go to our third critical track, Predestined Fate. This is my favorite track. The entire game. It's so good. Again, it's kind of a change in tone almost. But like, it fits when it happens. So this plays during intermissions, which is you save a crew member and then suddenly something happens and you're in this very straightforward, non-exploration based obstacle course, kind of, where you have to like help that specific crew member get to the end to another teleporter, that kind of thing. And it feels ominous because so do those. And also just the use of stereo sound in this song is so cool. Basically, the song is trying to get across the idea of you don't know where you are, but you're definitely not going to find anything out if you just stand here, so let's get moving. And at some point, I guess, the game was updated to have a new version of this song play in the first half of the final sequence of the game. And it's a really, really cool remix. I think I prefer the original a little bit better. I can't figure out exactly when this was patched in, but it's still pretty cool.
Definitely one that had to be here for sure. Yeah.
Our fourth critical track is Pressure Cooker. Probably the most intense song in the game, by far. And plays during the part of the game where the endless falling sort of thing is happening. For some reason, every time I listen to this song, I'm like, oh yeah, this is the final level. It's not. It never was, I'm pretty sure. I had to go replay the entire game to make sure. That's why I did it, not because I'd be able to play a video game under the guise of research for a podcast. But even so, like, it sounds like it should, because it's just driving and intense, and it's like, go, go, go. That's the theme of this soundtrack, is it's all telling you to, like, keep moving. Let's do this. Get going.
And this has the vocal clip in it, right?
Yeah, it's got some guy just going, V. Which I assume is Pålsson. I can't imagine who else it would be. But yeah. This one has that vocal clip in it. I don't know. It's a great song though. And last but not least, for number 5, we have the song Popular Potpourri. So this is the credits theme of the song. It's by far the longest song in the game. I think it's like 6 minutes long, and that's not even a loop. Which I don't think any of these songs loop, even in game. They just sort of end, and then the song starts again. But this one is a medley of every song in the game. And it's just got this really triumphant, upbeat, and fun feeling to it that's like, you did it! You won! It really makes you feel like you accomplished something finishing this game.
It is super happy. Just like very energetic.
It's exuding joy. I love it so much. So it's probably one of my favorite like credit songs to an indie game. It's up there, definitely. I don't think it's number 1, but top 5, definitely. So tracks on the cutting room floor. I got 2. Which one of them, after playing the game, I kind of had this thought of like, this song shows up a lot. I probably should have put it in the critical 5, but also like, I like my 5 a lot. And I think they're really good. But it's positive force. This song plays during The Tower, which is, in my opinion, one of the hardest parts of the game, but also like one of my favorite parts of the game. It plays during the Gravitron, again, one of the harder parts of the game, one of my least favorite parts of the game, and also plays during the final, like, gauntlet, the final half of the final sequence in the game. It plays a lot. So, honestly, thinking back on it, probably should have included it in the critical 5, but it's too late now, and I'm sticking to my guns on this one. There's also a like reversed version of it on the soundtrack, and I don't know why.
Yeah, if I were to pick a song for the Critical 5, it would have been this one. So at least it's on the cutting room floor. I think it's fine to include it there. Also because as far as like the structure goes, at least for the main melody of it, it's very similar to Pushing Onwards.
Mm-hmm.
Like
very much so.
Very much so. So I think Pushing Onwards is probably better symbolic of this game. Yeah, this does more, like changing keys and adding in new melodies, sure, but I think it would have been redundant to have Pushing Onwards and this on a Critical 5.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Though if I had to replace one, I probably would have replaced Pushing Onwards, which would have hurt me in my heart, but that probably would have been the best move to do. But here we are. Hindsight's 2020. I also wanted to give a shout out to Potential for Anything. Which plays during the flip string levels, which are the ones that get me the most, I'm pretty sure. So, it's memorable even just in that manner. The whole soundtrack is great. Like, there's I think 2 songs that aren't on this list. Maybe even just one that I can think of, which is Passion for Exploring. But, like, I don't think I think that song's good, but it's just good.
Yeah, there aren't too many tracks overall. So I think you've covered really the gamut of them. And this one's a good one in particular too, because it's a very different fullness to the sound, just with like the synth and bass and all. It's heavy.
Mm-hmm. It's a good song. It's a good soundtrack. So what will I never forget about VVVVVV? Like I said above, this is probably one of my favorite indie games. It's definitely my favorite one to just like, do I have like an hour that I need to kill? Screw it. I'll play VVVVVV again. Let's do it. And that's probably happened 6 or 7 times in my life. I replayed it, like I said, about 2 hours before we started recording. I finished it in 53 minutes and 16 seconds, died 275 times. And apparently my hardest room was upstairs, downstairs, which is not ringing a bell as one that I felt like I was most frustrated at. The one that I thought it was going to be the room I Love You, or the one immediately following it being That's Why I Have to Kill You. So that's what I figured it might be, but it wasn't. Usually it's the Gravitron. The Gravitron tends to be what kills me the most in that game. But yeah, it's generally super fun. And I don't know. I really, really enjoy playing it. That's basically also the soundtrack. I'll never forget the soundtrack as long as I live. It's probably one of my favorite chiptune soundtracks that's ever been made. So I'm glad I finally got to bring it to the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely a different combination of games this week, but Trials is a good way to to sum it up. Again, whether you're in the courtroom or it's trial and error with all the different platforming and deaths there. Great soundtracks for sure. I wish I could have played my game right before, but
it would have taken a while.
It's a bit longer than an hour. So overall, yeah, another great week of great games. Thanks so much for listening. That will do it for this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at the Dobaga. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, also at rhymeswithasia.com. But it's that MP3 podcast version that you want on Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. But it's really, I go to the Apple Podcast storefront, Google Play, anywhere you get your podcast, you can find it there for Original Soundchat. And you can take it with you on a run, in your car, at work. And we won't tell your boss that you're listening to conversations about great video game music. You can then talk to us on social media at SoundchatOST for feedback on how we're doing with the show and suggestions for future games that you'd like to see us cover. How is that Spotify playlist pulling together this week?
I believe both of these are on there.
Oh my gosh.
Because Capcom was what I mean, it's going to be hard to get the it's going to take some doing to get the Spirit of Justice tracks on there, because Capcom did a great thing and unloaded pretty much all of their soundtracks onto Spotify. But most of the titles are still in Japanese, and I can't read Japanese, so that might be a little bit hard. I believe VVVVVV is on Spotify. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it is.
So yeah, check out that Spotify playlist for all of the tracks that we have covered that happen to be on Spotify, because we can't have our podcast on there because of music usage things. So we'll just have that instead. And it's a great playlist to listen to, again, at work and wherever you're on the go. And then, check out our bonus tracks. We should have one coming in a couple weeks for our next video game composer interview. We already have Darren Korb up there. And also in the next couple weeks, we hopefully should have at least word of what our next bonus track show idea is going to be. So that is coming together slowly but surely.
I think our hope was to have it this month, but then we got busy and that didn't happen.
September is a crazy month for video game releases when you're over at Nintendo World Report, like we both are. So go check out our work there. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Dan
Salvato.
For me, it will be Gary Scheiman. So yes, we're talking about those games. Should be a fun time, certainly. All right, let's play us out.
All right, so like we said, for our transitions and our endings, we like to highlight a remix or a fan cover or something from YouTube, OST remix, what have you. I was doggedly determined to find a remix of Predestined Fate that I liked, and I did, from YouTuber NPC, so please enjoy that.
Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.